What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the MxBet Podcast. High demand episode today. We're here with Ari Mizachi, Senior Vice President of North America Business for Tangam Systems. And when I say high demand, I was texted by a few people, but one very influential to me, Mr. Dan Inkster, who's my head shave leader, team leader, and so a guy I know and love very much. He said, hey, there's this issue going around the industry right now relative to advantage play, and you got to have Ari on to talk about this. So to your credit, he texted me. I texted you like an hour later, and you were like, I'll be there in a week or 2 weeks or whatever it was. So very quick. So thanks for answering the bat signal or the advantage play signal and joining us. So welcome in.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
More importantly, with Dan with the shaving head, St. Baldrick's, he actually sponsored my son this year.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if you knew that or not.
I didn't know
My son had cancer 3 years ago in remission. So he asked, is it okay if, I know you guys pick a couple of kids and
sure.
pick my son.
Oh,
so
how
I'm
about
very
that?
humbled by that.
Well, I didn't know that he had allocated the fund. That's awesome. And congrats on the remission. That's always good. I'm sure that wasn't an easy journey to go through. And
No.
How long was the fight?
The fight was 5 months.
Okay.
So he had super aggressive cancer. And typically with super aggressive cancer, the chemo is as aggressive.
Sure.
So it was really humbling. Like World Series this year, Freddie Freeman, probably going to be the MVP.
Seems like it.
But you saw that his son had major issues. This 3-year-old that had major issues, and seeing him kind of be emotional and crying as an interview brought back a lot of memories for us, right?
Yeah.
So as a parent, it's hard. It's hard for sure. So
Well, I wasn't intending to talk about that, but I think it's A, congrats, and B, it's good to see that real people are being helped, right? I feel like a lot of us do the head shave or just, I've been pushing this whole chest wax thing, which is a little bit ridiculous. And you go, we're just trying to help. And you never really see it. Like, to be fair to, I think, a lot of the guys that participate, you go, we're just doing it because we know at some level it'll be helpful somewhere.
Sure.
Right? But then they sit here and go, well, it helped you.
Yep.
Like, that's, I don't know, I'm getting a little bit choked up, but as it is, awesome. Well, shout out to Dan and everyone that's helped St. Baldrick's over the years, and congrats to your boy for being on the right side of it. And I guess congrats to you probably sleeping a little easier now with not having to worry about all that. Yeah, so awesome. Well, that's good. That's heavy. But no, it's good. It's exciting. Well, now I feel silly going into advantage play. But let's get to it anyway. So it's all right. So this advantage play, you hear it all the time. I feel like it's not a new topic necessarily. It's probably just picking up steam. My favorite quote from The Office is, explain it to me like I'm 5. So what is advantage play for somebody that might be listening to this has no idea what we're talking about?
Yeah, so advantage play in a casino is someone that is not cheating, right? Not someone that is doing something illegal.
Yep.
Advantage play, whether it be in table games or whether it be in slots or any other form of gambling, is somebody that is taking advantage of a situation, a game, a mistake by a dealer, a game the way it's produced. And what I'll go into with slot advantage play is just the makeup of the game, and players have found a way to play the game when it is at an advantageous state, right? So that's what advantage play is, right? People that are not gambling, they're investing. They're making wagers that theoretically over the long run will make them more money. Just like being a casino, you're going to make more money in the long run as long as people continue to play because the house advantage is in your favor.
Right.
Advantage players play games when the advantage is in their favor.
Got it. And so they've figured out how to, I guess, sit on the sidelines long enough to then observe. And I don't know if this is the right analogy. For me, what comes to mind is counting cards, right? And so you sit there and you say, okay, I'm not going to play necessarily. I'm counting, right? Theoretically, I'm counting. Then I go, now I know that the deck is running in such a way, or the shoe is running in such a way, that if I bet now, my odds of winning are tremendous.
Correct.
Almost unbeatable. And so then I get in and I win a bunch of money and I leave, and I don't sit there for the down hands. I just play the good hands, right? Just as an example. That's kind of what we're saying? Like it's some version of that. You're waiting for your advantage?
Waiting for your advantage, but when you're counting cards, the most advantage you could possibly have is a 2% return.
Got it.
Right? So if you make a $100 wager, the most advantage you could have is 2% on that game, regardless of the count. At the most extremes, it's around 2%.
Okay.
These situations, that positive expected value is actually significantly higher.
So what would be, I guess, a ballpark of the, so it's 2% in counting cards, which is my dumb example, but for like what you're talking about, slots and others, how high does that go?
It could be a 20% positive EV.
I mean, that's 10 times more. I mean, that's
10 times.
Yeah.
Card counters probably don't count cards anymore. They're playing slots.
Really? Yeah. So, okay. So what are they looking for? I mean, I feel like this is now the airplane center seat question I get everywhere I go. How do I beat the slots?
Yeah.
And I always say, you can't. But maybe you could. So what is it that they're looking for?
So let's go back to
Sure, yeah.
Let's go to 1997.
I love it.
So slots, as you and I know it, as most slot players know it, as most casino operators know it, whether I press a button or you press a button, we're both going to have the same advantage or disadvantage because it's an RNG.
That's right.
That's how slots were built.
House keeps 10% or whatever it's going to be.
RNG based, right? So when you think about the game designers, what's their goal when they're designing a game? Their goal is to create games that are engaging, that will keep people at the machines longer and wanting them to come back.
Sure.
I'm assuming that if you were on a whiteboard and you were a manufacturer, you'd be like, that's your goal. Build something that will keep people
play it. So that's always in action. They want more of this. They're going to stay loyal, play it 100%.
Sure. So as technology has evolved, back in 1997 on the S2000s, there were two mechanical reel games that were built in a way that had a persistence feature that gave the player at a time in its cycle an advantage in the player's favor and not the house's. So this was an S2000 where the top part of the cabinet was a digital. It could be like a screen, and they added one game was called Wild Cherry Pie. The other one was called Double Diamond Mind.
Okay.
And as the game progressed, Wild Cherry Pie had a pie with little red dots, and as the game progressed and a symbol of a cherry landed on the reel, it added up there. And what would happen is once it filled up, the bonus had to hit.
Got it. So in this example, because I think what might be confusing to some is we've emulated this idea in a lot of games today, but you're saying this was a real thing where if I got 6 cherries on my pie, whatever the number was, 6, 10 cherries, now the bonus is coming.
Correct.
There's not 10 and you wait. It's 10 and you're going.
10 and you go. So what would happen is you'd be playing, right? You're the guy that doesn't know any better. You're pounding away. I'm standing there waiting. You get up. It's in a positive state. I take your seat. I start playing. I profit.
Yep.
Right? So that was built. A couple of games caused a nuisance for slot operators, but you're talking about 2 game types. Not going to be a real problem, right? You're going to deal with some customer service issues. Back in the day, you probably heard stories of an advantage player flicking a cigarette in the lap of the slot player, so he gets up and leaves, so now the guy could jump in the positive state.
Yeah.
But a very small quantity of games, so it really didn't cause a big issue.
So, so let's break that open for a second. So what you're saying is now the behavior, so the cherry issue isn't actually the issue. The issue is in this scenario, some people know that 10 cherries equals a bonus. Some people don't. Some people are just playing the game. They're on a ride.
99% of people wouldn't
had no idea.
Yeah.
But if you knew, then you're just basically, I don't know, waiting around the edges to say that's at 9 cherries. I'm going to see if I can get this guy to move because I know that the next cherry is mine. So I may be a pestilence or whatever, a nuisance to this player that's creating a bad customer experience for that person, only so that I can go in, reap the rewards, and probably get the hell out of there.
Use it as an ATM.
Got it. Yeah, okay.
So it's card counting for slots.
So this first populated back in late
97.
97, Wild Cherry Pie.
Fast forward, and as you probably know history, though I work on the vendor side, started as a poker dealer, worked my way career, table games.
Anyone wants Ari's story, go to our first interview. So I forgot to mention he is a repeat customer, but he's got his whole highlight history and his operation side. So I don't want to cut you off on that, but there's a whole hour on that, so you can dive in. But yes, former operator, so now you're living this.
Yeah, so the reason why I say that is COVID happens. Our company, Tangam, decides with my asking, let's build a slot optimization tool.
Yep.
Problem is, 5 years ago, I didn't know anything about slots.
Sure.
I was always a table games poker guy, didn't really know. And it's my responsibility with my boss, our developers, to build a product.
Sure.
So in that process of learning and discovery, and I always say that this industry is my life's work.
Yep.
Like if I want to do something, it's 1,000% or 0.
Yep.
So when I got enamored with like slots, why people play slots, I was all in. And I was very lucky with our software to identify this problem that I didn't know was a problem.
Yeah.
So the one thing I've learned about gamblers is in the long run, you're supposed to lose.
Yeah, that's
right?
the math.
As long as everything is kosher, you're not an advantage player, you're not a cheat, you're getting taxed on whatever wager you make.
Yep, that's right.
And in the long run, you lose. So through our software, I started noticing players that won on a everyday basis for the most part.
Unusual amount.
And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. That goes against the grain of a 10% edge. Like, how is someone fading this on a game that has a 10% edge? So then I started doing some discovery. So in June of 2020, We installed our software at a property in the United States. Pretty social guy, try to get to know people. I met a pit manager at this one particular property, and in this one particular property, they were allowed to play slots on their time off.
They were.
Okay. And they still are. So he's like, hey, you see that bank of games right there? He's like, I make an extra $30,000 a year playing that game. And I'm like, this guy's a Looney Tune.
Yeah,
like, what do you? That's not possible.
One, you can't be true. Two, why are you telling me?
Why are you telling me,
exactly,
right? And maybe it's just my
Couldn't
face,
help
right? I'm
himself.
like a teddy bear,
exactly.
right? So I put that in the back of my head. Don't think anything about it. Fast forward a year later, I'm on a Vegas property, offshore property for work. I'm playing Ultimate Fire Link.
Yeah.
It's one of the games I like to play. And a bum rocks up to me and he goes, hey, there's a game over there that you can't lose at. And I'm like,
who's this guy? Yeah. Where'd you come from?
And I'm like, he's like literally holes in his clothes. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, how much do I got to invest? He's like, oh, no more than $100. And the guarantee the bonus is going to go off. And I'm like, this is going to be the best $100 I've ever spent.
Social experiment of my life. Yeah, exactly.
So he takes me to the game. Bonus goes off. And he's like, the only deal is whatever we profit. If you lose, you might lose because it's like card counting. But if we profit, we'll split it. And I'm like, no problem, dude. I was going to give you 100% if we win anything just for the education. Long story short, play for 10, 15 minutes. We profit $16. I give him his $8. I get back and I'm like, maybe there's something about this. But my two experience was like, this can't be a real problem.
Yeah.
We have one guy telling me he makes a little bit extra money on his time off at a casino he works at. And then basically a homeless
but
person.
there's also a big swing between $30,000 a year extra on a bank that he's eyeballing, and $8 each. Right? Like, what are we doing?
So fast forward another year, and as we're developing our tool, that's when I start seeing, wait, there's a lot of players with our clients that are winning a consistent basis, and now I'm like, I am in full discovery mode. Like,
so these two guys planted a seed with you that maybe that could be done. Not maybe super convincing, but there's at least a belief out there that they're doing this, and then you start seeing the data and you go, wait a minute, maybe there is something.
Yeah, because originally, like when I lived in Vegas, a guy told me he played video poker for a living and he made like $35K profit, but most of it was from the marketing and the gifts and all that. And I'm like, that sounds like a life no one wants, right?
Not the job
so that's what I thought was
Sure.
the problem. Like people are taking advantage, they're getting points for using their card. They're not really extracting cash. They're benefiting from maybe the marketing. Okay, this is just like a video poker player.
Sure.
That's what I thought. And then when I started seeing real data, I was like, we got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for me was I didn't know what the games were, what the mechanic of the game was while they played. It wasn't a mechanical reel like Wild Cherry Pie or Double Diamond Mind. It was games that I didn't know. And then I started doing a ton of research. So about 3 years ago, I really went all in and trying to understand, is this a problem in our industry or is it not?
Sure.
And I started realizing that around just before COVID, one of the manufacturers started putting video reels on the floor with persistence features.
Yep.
Similar to the Cherry Pie. I won't go into there's about 360 different themes across almost every manufacturer that has a persistence feature today.
True persistence.
True persistence, not perceived. Perceived is perceived. Funny thing is some of them have taken perceived and added a true, which kind of makes it true, so you can still take advantage.
Interesting.
Like we could spend weeks on this subject. So few games, started understanding it, and unfortunately in our industry, from a manufacturer slots, it becomes a copycat business.
Sure.
Those games are on the Eilers report, and they're doing 5 times the house average.
Right.
We got to start making those.
Yeah.
We got to start making, and then every manufacturer starts making games with persistence. Why? Because what I believe is
they're working.
They're bubbling up.
For sure.
And that was the issue, I think, in our industry 3 years ago was, as slot operators, we looked at the performance of the game. Game has a 10% house edge, has $10,000 in wagers. We made $1,000. This is awesome. The problem with advantage slot play, and I'll get into more detail, is when you press the button on a non-persistence game, you're going to play at a 10% edge. I am complete RNG. The difference with advantage games is the money is not equally distributed.
Right.
I think of it, and I try to correlate to daily fantasy sports. Why does daily fantasy sports not work? Because 99% of the money is won by 1% of the players.
Yeah.
Because it's a game of skill.
Sure.
So when you build a business model where players that are professionals can take advantage of you and I that
for
don't know
sure.
any
I would
better,
be
right? I
horrible.
pick
Yep,
like
exactly.
random guy.
yeah.
Why do I always lose? Because I'm playing against a computer.
Some algorithm that
Can't
just
win.
knows. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Poker, me against 8 professionals, I'd lose my shirt.
For sure.
Right? So you would never run a poker room where you would have 8 professionals and 1 recreational player. Your business will close very quickly.
Yep.
So what happens here is these games at face value are earning what they're supposed to earn.
Yep.
They're performing how they're supposed to earn. The difference here is they're not, the funds are not being distributed equally in an RNG way.
Sure.
So that's why it's such a big subject to me. That's why Dan and I go back and forth, is that I think of it as there's a risk to the slot economy.
Okay.
Right? So you think about all the slot players in the world are playing. They're going in, they're trusting that I'm going to play this game. I know that it has a 10% hold,
Yep.
whether they know or don't know. But every time I press it, I know that I have the same advantage as the guy next door.
You feel like you have a fair shake.
Fair
So
shake.
whatever that number is, you know, this is the deal I've signed up for. I'm going to try to stop the story in my favor, but it's called 10% hold. We're fine here. Yep.
And with some of these true persistence games that have very long cycles, and so every true persistence game is not equal.
Sure.
Right? There are some true persistence games that only have 3 cycles and go away. That's not an issue, right? If you play a game that you didn't make enough, you don't have enough money to play the 3 spins, well, shame on you.
Yeah, right.
Right? Some of these others are 10 spin cycles. You have a $1 average bet, you didn't put $10 in the machine, shame on you.
Yeah.
If the guy behind you takes advantage. But then you have some of these games that take hundreds and hundreds of handle pulls, maybe before the thing will go off. And what happens there is, if you and I play this game at its base state, you and I do not have enough money to experience the lows of the game.
Yep.
Because at its base state, the reason why I say at its base state, if a persistence game has a 10% house edge, it's very different than everything that I just mentioned. In order for the game to have a 10% house edge and there be a way for somebody to take advantage of it, think of it as a pendulum.
Yeah.
So if you're playing the game only when it's a 5% house edge,
Yep.
that means that the pendulum has to swing completely the other way for the novice player. Maybe they're playing the game at a 15% house edge.
Yep.
Maybe they're playing the game at a 25% house edge. And the reason why I say that that's a threat to the slot economy is that there's always this internal debate of, do players feel house edge, right?
Yep.
There's these arguments. You have these AI geniuses that are saying,
Yeah.
no, dude, all this analysis, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you can't really feel anything between 9.5 and 10, but once you get to 10.3, people can start feeling whatever the work is done. We're talking about games that could be at 25% when someone's
Yeah.
playing it. And if you're debating about your property, saying, I want a lot of time on the device because I'm a local property and I want people to be able to play, well, then how could you have games at its base state? And I don't know the exact numbers. I'm not the designer, but
Right.
it could be 15, it could be 20, it could be 25, it could be 30. And so that's the issue. So fast forward, right? I identified that there were these players winning money, and then we were able to cross-reference all the games they played.
Got it.
And then any true advantage player, they don't gamble, they invest. So a card counter will never wager on anything unless it's a positive expected return for them.
Sure.
It's the same thing with a slot advantage player. So we were able to see all the games that they played, so they kind of like helped us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I don't really want to talk about themes because I don't want anybody to be bad unless you want me to talk about themes.
It doesn't bother me. I think here's the thing. If it's factual, we're not really saying anything that's not out there. I guess more yeah, we can avoid it for now, but I think for me, it's like, what is tipping these guys off? I think that's more my issue, because you said, like, so some of the games you gave me, like, were 10. I could kind of imagine the theme where you look at, I think that's like a scarab game.
Correct.
Right? So you say, look.
Which to me is actually not a problem in the AP world.
Fair, but and it's a fun game. Like, I remember playing it quite a bit. And so you say, okay, well, this makes sense. I don't know anymore, but like I remember there was a time where that was, if it wasn't the top game, it was in the top Eilers charts, and so people go, well, we should emulate that. And that, I guess, to me was obvious, because I remember even as a player, you go, well, 10 spins, and if you, to your point earlier, if you don't pay to get your 10 spins, then that's on you.
That's on you.
But I guess for some of these longer spins, like I don't know if it's hundreds or however many you said, how does somebody know? Like, I get I mean, maybe you use a theme as a reference or not. It's up to you. But like, I just feel like what is out there that somebody could walk up and go,
Yeah. So it's a good question. So some of these games with the game math, and I'll pick the first one just because why not? And it's a game that isn't on many floors anymore. IGT's Hexbreaker.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know the game or not, but the game starts at, say, I don't know, 243 ways, 1,024 ways, and as the game progresses, an arrow will land in one of the 5 reels. And once the arrow lands, that one reel goes up a notch, and it goes from X amount of ways to Y amount of ways.
Yeah, that's right.
And it grows.
Yeah.
Well, when it grows, the math of the game changes, right?
For sure.
So if you're playing the game at 1,000 ways and I'm playing the game at 4,000 ways, I have a better chance of making money than you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then ultimately, once the arrow, the reel goes all the way to the top, there's like a bonus symbol or a mystery bonus, whatever the case may be. And then once the arrow hits on that reel, it goes off. So what happens is people that are way smarter than you and I reverse engineer the math and say, at this state, the game has a positive expected value. So, and that information's free. Google it.
Yeah, so in this example, that game has said, okay, once the reels have grown X amount, right?
Correct.
So whether it's by reel or however many positive spaces, we're in. Because now we know that that's where we're on the plus side of this equation versus the beginning where you're probably on the minus side.
Right. So in order for that game, which maybe it has a 10% house edge, I don't know what it does.
Let's just pretend it does, yeah.
It can't have a 10% house edge at its base state, and it can't have it when it's all the way to the top.
Yep.
The
It's
math
going to
just
be
doesn't
the
work.
average of that. So when it's
average
that's
of that.
right.
So you and I that don't know any better are going to say, "Oh, that's a cool cabinet. That's cool graphics.
Yeah.
Music sounds good.
Interesting reel combination. Yeah.
I'm playing."
Yeah.
With advantage slot play is you as a recreational player will almost never find it when it's at a positive state because there's AP players across every casino across the United States sitting in the wings waiting to find it. And that's the problem, right? So the math of the game works.
Yep.
The design of the game makes sense. In the iGaming space, it makes perfect sense to me because I don't know if you know this or not, when you play iGaming, persistence games, it's Mike's game. So say you play Hexbreaker online, arrows go up on the $2 wager because every denom and every bet has a different screen. For it to be true persistence, that has to be the case. So say you're playing a $2 wager in iGaming, and it's all the way to the top, and you're like, I got to stop playing because I got to have dinner.
Yep.
You could come back tomorrow. That game is still at the state that you left it.
Interesting. So there's like a memory feature basically that says even if I log off and come back, that's my Hexbreaker in this case.
It's personal
Yeah.
persistence.
Got it. Yep.
So
interesting.
personal persistence makes all the sense to me.
Because there's no whatever piranha or behavior or whatever parasite behavior.
But in brick and mortar, it can't happen.
Yeah, because and then I guess one of the issues I'm hearing is that you play, whether you know what you're doing or not, you're out of money.
Right.
You leave, doesn't matter. I pick up where you left off.
Exactly right.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
So you have people that are just standing behind these games, and they're using as ATMs. So that's 3 years ago, right? I'm like, I found something. I don't know how big of it a problem is, but I will continue studying this.
Sure.
And the catalog of games grew and grew more and grew more, and newer manufacturers probably looking at the report saying, hey, persistence works, let's build some games. And it kept on growing and growing to where there's about 350 themes today.
Yep. When
I started looking at this stuff 4 years ago, maybe there was 50 themes. Now there's like 350.
Yeah.
And again, it's not I don't think it's anything that anyone's done wrong. It's that advantage players are always 7 steps ahead of us.
Yeah. So, okay. So then today you have these themes. So what I'm going to just ask you, because I don't want to make the assumption, are we still seeing true persistence games on the top of the charts?
Yes.
Okay.
And so what we've studied is that, so a true persistence game, you've got to think about it this way. One is a game comes out, it's cool cabinet, cool themes, cool music. Yep. You're getting volume from your rec player.
Sure.
But then you're getting increased volume from your AP player. So it's almost some inflated coin in.
Sure.
What we've studied is those games like when you think about the life cycle of a game, right?
Yep.
You would hope a manufacturer would build something that lasts forever, but they don't, right? There are some games that would stand the test.
Well, they hope
time.
So too, to be fair.
They
but
do,
the reality is most of these games fall off after a quarter or so, and then you got to cycle them out. Yeah.
And what we've studied is the ones with true persistence fall off much faster than anything else.
Interesting.
Because you play the game at that 15, 20, 30% edge, you're like, I'm not playing that game again.
Didn't like that ride. Yeah, exactly.
My money burned through it too quickly. And so I think as players cycle through these games, they stop coming back. When they stop coming back, then the APs can't play them because there's no cycle in those games for them to take advantage. So it's that kind of
And then the operator goes, this isn't working, switch it.
So it's quick dive. So the problem with this is, one, I think of it, and I'm not an economist, and I come from the school of hard knocks, is that there's a slot economy and there's a pie.
Yep.
And every day in a regular casino, if your hold's 9%, you're taxing that coin in at 9% of your recreational players. If you add these games, you're starting to take that pie and tax them at a much higher percent.
Interesting.
And then, and the long-term play, in the short run, hey, I don't care who wins the money. I'm holding 10%.
Yep.
my opinion is you probably should care. So two things. One is I come from the school of table games, right, where there has been millions, if not billions of dollars spent on table games advantage play and table games cheating, right? I mean, old school, like you can never, the old school guys call it their store. It's not a casino, they call it a store. You can't come into my store and take advantage of me or else, whatever.
Yeah, bad things happen.
And if that happens, you have supervisors that look at these games, pit managers, shift managers, directors, surveillance, the whole world. There's conferences galore about table games that there's zero about slots.
Yeah.
Why? Because when a table games person takes advantage of a table, you're taking it from the house.
Mm-hmm.
When a slot advantage player takes advantage of a slot, they take it from the other customers.
I see. So at the end, because over time, the house is going to get their money.
The house is going to hold 10%.
It's all going to get to the 10%. But in this scenario, you may be getting something and I'm paying for you to get it.
It's your regular customers that are playing this game that don't know any other, are priming this game for someone else to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And what we've discovered is, in a hyper-competitive gaming market that is the United States, you have companies with very high tier statuses, and you could get rooms and food and flights and all that. And the majority of our industry, you look at a player's theoretical value, right?
Yeah.
Mike came in, he cycled through 10K in coin in, 10% house hedge, he's worth $1,000. Well, what do I give Mike?
Yeah.
Well, what if I told you that $1,000 that person cycled through, their expected win-loss is a loss to you of $500?
Yeah, right.
You'd be like, well, I don't want that.
I want to bring
So you have So you have a lot of people now that are basically quitting their jobs and using these machines as ATMs, reaping the benefits from marketing programs, and on paper it all looks okay, and that's why it's a really contentious conversation, because you're like, Ari, what are you talking about? The game holds 10%.
Well, yeah, so I think that's what I'm trying to understand. So when you look at that, you say, well, on paper, it's not that they don't care, but they're not going to notice it as much because it's like, well, I'm still making my 10%.
That's right.
Do I really care if it was Mike or Ari who won the money? Right. Maybe historically I don't, because I won my piece. But then what I'm hearing you say is where this is starting to become a problem, right, is we both get rewarded.
Yes.
And you may be I'm making you the smart one in this scenario. You're the advantage player, and it's, well, we're going to give you all these comps and benefits and marketing dollars or free play or whatever the thing is that we've opted to use as your reward. And I'm actually not going to get the return on that, right? So you're going to take not only the money out of the game, but then you're going to come back and take your free play, hotel, steak dinner, whatever, and you're also still going to win because you're actually not going to lose back what I thought you were going to lose back to pay for all those amenities.
Yeah, so, I mean, when I go back to the old school days, is that you would never want to own a business, whether it's a casino or a 7-Eleven, where a person's going to walk through the door and never give you any money.
Right.
An advantage slot player will only win in the long run. They will never lose. So theoretically, how are you okay with that, right? How are you okay with a person coming in, potentially creating a pretty poor experience for your regular customers, which actually happened yesterday to me. I was walking the slot floor at a casino that I'm staying at, not to mention.
Yeah, that's right.
And a meth head came up and said, there's a game at a positive state. Do you have any money? And we could play. And I'm like,
yeah,
this is perfect because I flew here to talk about this.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm like, how I should have filmed it.
Yeah. Side note, it's interesting to me what kind of people approach you. You got a very, you got a very interesting fan
I'm
club
not
here,
intimidated,
Art.
clearly.
No, that's okay. Yeah. But, so that's, so what do we do?
So I think operators just truly have to understand and collaborate, right? So again, not all true persistence games are bad. I think the ones that operators need to really think about are the long cycle ones, the ones that take a ton of coin in to get to a positive state, and then potentially a lot of coin in to make that event happen. An individual person. So again, with the stuff that we do, we look at like average rated session time at a game.
Okay.
A hold and spin game like Dragon Link and Locket Link and all these other links, they spend about 7 minutes, right? 7 minutes per session, and they move on.
Pick a new game or whatever.
Well, in a true persistence game, if you find a game at a base state, you might spend 30, 40, 50 minutes until it happens. But you don't care because you're investing.
But that's somebody that knows it's coming.
It's
So they're going to spend half an hour more because I know if I just keep going, the must hit by is there or the whatever it is there. Yeah.
Right. So the person that's the rec that averages 7, 8, 9, 6 minutes, they're never going to experience
They're
that
still
low
probably
and
7
that high.
minutes.
Yeah, they're playing 7 minutes, right?
Yeah.
They got 42 minutes to play. They want to play 9 games, and
Boom.
they're going, right? That's just the way it is, which actually doesn't calculate.
We weren't going to hold you on that there,
It's
Professor.
okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
So they're moving around anyway, but then the idea is that what some of the metrics you start to pick up? Where you go, well, wait a minute, this guy's winning a lot. He spent 40 minutes on whatever this game is, and now we got to look at that game.
Yeah, so then it just became easy after that. Well, once you could put the model together of identifying players that are taking advantage, cross-referencing what they're playing, and then we've built a catalog of 350 games, and now we could be, we're able to then cross-reference players that are dominant to those games. Give me a list of all the customers, and 99.9 out of 100 times, it's all advantage players.
Yeah, so I guess, and maybe this isn't where we make recommendations, but I'm looking at this going, okay, so we've created this scenario that exists, and it's beneficial for everyone except the rec player because the casino's still making their money. The advantage player's making their money. The vendors are loving it because I'm on the top of the Eilers charts, right? So it's like, where's the negative? Well, the negative is, mom and dad down the road didn't win, and they're the ones that can't come back next time because they didn't win anything.
And those are the people in the long run that really pay our bills.
Yeah, well, for sure.
They pay the vendor bills. They pay the casino bills.
Right. And you don't want them to have because they'll stop gambling. If they believe they can't win, if every time they come in they just lose, it's like eventually it's like, I'm done, right? And so I get that. But I guess so then what tweaks can we make? Because I don't know that you can just stop making the games. Yeah, maybe. But I feel like if they're working, there's a market for them, unless you say they're only working because of these guys.
Yeah, I have a strong opinion. And
give it to me.
Yeah, I think long cycle, true persistence games, they don't work in the long run.
Okay.
Right? So you had a game that was number one of the Eilers own for a long time, and they're now being pulled out of most casinos because it went like that, right?
Yep.
Like people got super excited about it.
Yep.
Everybody's buying more of these cabinets. This is great. And then eventually the rec player was like, okay, I tried it twice.
Yeah.
I like the theme because it was part of a theme of another catalog.
Interesting.
But this mechanic, man, every time I play, I just lose my money fast.
Yeah.
So it will eventually work itself out. What I try to advise to our clients and to the casino operators, 9 out of 10 of these games are owned games. They're not leased.
Sure.
So you're buying a cabinet with a theme that you're being promised is 3.7, house average.
Yeah, whatever it is, yeah.
I'm like, but what happens when it goes to 0.5 in a very short period of time? Right? So you're allocating all this capital to owned. It's because these themes are doing well where I kind of already know, right?
Yeah.
I walked the floor today and I found a new manufacturer that added, and I'm like, that will be gone in 3 months.
Yep.
Even though it was very popular right now because you have the rec player that's a new cool cabinet, and then you have the APs ready to pounce.
Yep.
And I think that's again, I go back to the slot economy. See, I started my career in poker.
Yep.
Right? When I was being mentored 20-something years ago, and they said, if you ever run a poker room, don't ever offer no limit hold'em, which I know is comical because if you go to a
Now
poker room today,
that's all you get.
But the reason why this older gentleman told me that, he's like, Ari, if you have a poker room full of 4-8 limit hold'em, no one goes broke.
No.
Right? You can't go broke playing 4-8 limit.
Yeah.
Right? You can have a good time. You might lose $100, might lose $2. But if you offer no limit, that poker economy could shrink quickly.
Sure.
Now, this person is before the moneymaker effect and all that.
Yeah.
Poker got so big that it didn't matter anymore.
Sure.
But back in the day, in the 90s, when I got into poker, it was a small-knit community.
It's the same idea is what you're saying.
It's the same idea. Is that you want to protect your recs because the recs are the ones that pay your bills. They're the ones that and if you don't protect your recs, because another thing I was also mentored in poker was when I started opening up poker rooms, they said, don't worry about the professionals. If you take a business and take care of your recs, the professionals will come and you'll have a great poker room.
Sure.
If you base a poker room just on professionals, you won't have much business.
Right.
So for me, this is so near to my heart because it's like you got the guy or gal that earn their money. They come to your casino with $100 in the hopes of winning something.
Yeah, blow off some steam, maybe win a few bucks, have a beer or two, or whatever their thing is.
And they're playing a game with a 30% house edge.
Right.
And it's like,
Because
they didn't know that.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to say shame on that person? Well, that doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's hard to put the shame, right? Because you sit there and you go, well, the game in itself, There's nothing inherently wrong with it. I get you're saying like that it's better.
You just have to experience the full cycle
That's
to
right.
get to 10%.
That's
And
right.
a singular person cannot experience the full cycle. They don't have enough money or time.
Got it. Yeah,
And
so-
the game should be built where it's personal persistence, as we talk about iGaming,
yep.
or it's 10-game cycle, 3-game cycle.
Shorter
But
run.
once you get to the really long cycle games, it's just impossible. It's physically,
Yeah.
whether it's time on device or they don't have enough money in their pocket,
Yep.
they're never going to experience the lows to eventually experience the highs and be like, this was a great experience. Because the only thing that's great about those games is when you get to that top experience.
Yep.
Not when you're playing at a base state and you're just getting completely hammered.
Yeah.
So it's like you're kind of giving a disservice. And at the end, when you look at it as just numbers and data, you're like, I don't understand. It held 10%. It's a great game.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. I think so. Okay. So like on the potentially the vendors can reevaluate whether they want to make these long persistence games or not. If right now the behavior tends to be, hey, it's working, I'm going to make them. Right. So I think that's probably most people go smart. Right. But then, so that the second option would be to caution or educate the operator. Say, well, wait a minute. They may be working now, but short shelf life. So maybe you have to evaluate, do you want a 90-day boom for an almost certain bust?
Correct.
Or do you want to just take a different attack and say, well, maybe pick a different game that's perceived persistence. It gives a little bit of a chase, but it'll stay longer.
Yes.
So they have to be, I don't want to say old enough, but like they're grown-ups. They can make that choice whether they want to buy those games or not, I guess.
Yeah, and the one thing that I think is missing, so to the manufacturer's defense, they don't get patron data.
Sure.
They don't know what customers really are like. And I mean, they could do focus groups and all that
Sure.
stuff, but they don't get session level, rating level data
That's right.
to truly understand how long a person plays and all. Casinos don't offer that information to manufacturers. So they just see the result. Hey, the game's popular, it's making money, let's make more.
Got a marketing post because I'm number 3 or whatever. Yeah,
If
exactly.
I was in charge of product, I'd be like, make more of those.
Exactly, yeah.
They're making informed decisions with the data they have. What we're able to do, or with when you take performance data and you marry it with session level data, ratings data, you can look at things like loyalty. And what I have never found for any long persistence game is a non-advantage player that is loyal
Sure.
to a true persistence game.
Yeah.
And that's when the light bulb for me went off.
Got it.
And I'll tell you my last story, which I think
Sure,
is completely comical. So, again, I come from a school hard knocks. Pretty, whenever I walk the floors, I'm always looking in every direction to try to learn. So at the height of me learning all this, I visited a client in Pennsylvania. And one of the true attributes of an advantage slot play is they would fast tap the game.
Okay.
They're not interested in playing.
They're not here for the ride. They want the money. Yeah.
Hey, just get me to the bonus.
Yep.
Did I profit or not? And I'm on to the next one. So I walked by a bank of games on a way to a meeting, but I had some time. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed two guys pretty well dressed like you.
Thank you.
In a place where people aren't really that well dressed.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And one guy was standing, the other guy was playing, and the guy that was playing was not engaged in the
Just
game.
banging it.
He's
Yeah.
having a casual conversation. Gamblers that really gamble do not.
Yeah,
They're
you're in it.
They're
You're
focused,
zoned.
right? I'm in it, right? I'm playing. And he's playing and he's fast tapping. And then I turn and look, and it's a game that I didn't know because it's a brand new game. And I'm like, oh, this must be a true persistence. This is all in my discovery. So maybe it's because I'm from Brooklyn. I'll just go up to anyone and talk because maybe that's just how New Yorkers are. So when he finally gets into his bonus and is done, I'm like, hey, are you a slot advantage player? And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, dude, I don't work here. Like, I'm dressed
you're not
like
allowed
this.
to tell me. Yeah.
So I'm like, no. I was like, this is something new that I'm trying to learn. Is this real? And I don't know, maybe they got a liking to me.
Yeah.
And they kind of explained it all. And they're like, this world is a lot bigger than you think. You just scratched the surface.
Sure.
And they're like, in the last 3 years, we've made over $1 million. Cash. I was like, oh, you don't use a player's card. And she's like, why would I use a player's card when I could just use this as an ATM?
Yeah.
Why do I need them to know that I'm winning money? Because I'm just an unrated play.
Yeah.
And most of these wins are untaxable, right? Because you're just getting into a $2 bonus. You're going to get like $300. Like that stuff doesn't trigger an event to where I need your ID.
Got
So
it.
most of those transactions at the lower end for advantage players, if you say, oh, I'm going to not give you marketing, I'm not going to give you free play, I'm not going to let you stay in a hotel room, they're like, no problem, I'll be back tomorrow and just not
Wasn't
use
here
my
for
card.
anyway. Yeah.
And that's the misconception. So there's been many podcasts about like slot advantage play. Oh, they're taking advantage of your marketing. That's a small component of slot advantage play, but that's not what this is a much bigger problem than somebody taking advantage of your free play offers.
Yeah.
And they basically said that they're able to reverse engineer their games as soon as they hit the floor. They know about these games before everybody else. He had no reason to lie to me, and he's the one that planted the final seed for me to do all the research. And then what he told me was true.
Yeah.
And I was like, there are people that are making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month just playing slots. And when I knew that it was true, was about a year and a half ago, I was in Las Vegas, saw our next poker pro from Pennsylvania, Parks I used to work at.
Sure.
And he's like, yeah, he goes, we don't play poker anymore. We just play these things. And I'm like,
doing these.
it really is a problem. And then the last
yeah.
thing was we saw a direct correlation between Baccarat players and slot advantage. So historically, Baccarat players didn't play slots. You're playing a game with a very low house edge to 11%.
Yeah, right.
So now we see that there's a ton of Baccarat players that are slot advantage players. And if all these symptoms aren't really a problem, then maybe I'm just really wrong here.
I think everybody agrees there's a problem. I think it's just trying to figure out, I think part of the stimulus for this is like get a conversation going, how do you fix it, right? Because you could argue make different games, right? But they're going to argue these games work, right? Then you could say, well, make that choice if you're willing to have that boom, but figure out as an operator, are you willing to put your rec players through that cycle? So maybe if they clue in, they go, maybe it's not worth it. I don't want to take the money from the locals and give it to the one guy who's going to never spend it with me again. Seems like a bad, economic move. And but is there any way to police these players' behavior? I mean, obviously they're not flicking cigarettes on you anymore. That would probably be illegal or rude.
Smarter. They don't want to get kicked out, right?
For sure. You mentioned at the beginning, this isn't illegal. It's frowned upon. It's not. Yeah.
So some operators like, we're going to kick the players out. I'm like, okay, but how do you manage that? So in table games,
what'd they do wrong?
You have a dealer, a supervisor, pit manager, shift manager, like eyes on a person.
Sure.
Okay, you're telling me I can't play here anymore. I'll be back tomorrow in some random zone.
Yeah, right.
Who's going to know I'm there?
That's fair.
Right? So that it's hard to police that, right? We're going to take their marketing away. That doesn't really stop them from coming. My opinion is we don't have a client that has more than 11% of their floor with true persistence. So when you think about
that still seems like a high number. What's an average like for, I guess, if somebody wasn't aware of this, what does that end up?
I've seen as low as like 7%, as high as 11. Okay. It's weird because there are not a lot of those games relative to all the other themes that are out there. So I think that, do you want a business where people could walk through the door every day knowing they're taking money out of your slot machine?
Yeah.
I think everybody would say absolutely not.
Sure.
Right? You got to service that customer. You got to give them free drinks. They might get calls of past experience. And I know unequivocally they, in the long run, will take money out of the casino. Yeah. They're not taking it from my pocket. They're taking it from the rec player's pocket. But I know that they can never give me $1.
Sure.
Why do I want that as a business?
Fair. So you have, I don't know, I know it's north of 100 customers that you advise as your company. You're obviously interested in you're kind of leading the charge on this advantage play. Have you taken customers down? So basically saying, you're my client, I'm advising you, you have 11%, we got to drop that down. Let's call it 7% now is the other end of the window. And has those dollars been spent? Like have you basically said, if a customer, because what I'm imagining an operator would say, I guess what I'm trying to build to is, well, I can't get rid of these games because then they're not going to play here. They're not going to. It's not as easy as saying I'm going to take the persistence dollar out and put it in a perceived game or a different game.
They go somewhere else.
They go somewhere else within the casino. So the game, or they're going to leave the building.
They go to another casino.
Yeah. So as an operator, theoretically, you would lose that dollar, the advantage play dollar. It may not be a dollar you want, but in a world where spreadsheets are ruining everything, that spreadsheet's going to look worse.
Yeah. So in the short run, so again, I said this is an economic problem,
for sure.
And I'm not smart enough to be an economist, but in the long run, this will shrink our slot economy. Unless marketers are really good at replacing customers that stop playing, at some point, if you have a smaller percentage of the population taking the most of the money, that pie will shrink.
Yeah.
In the short run, your coin in will go down.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go next door.
Yeah, right.
But that customer will never give you $1 in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's important to me as an operator, if I own a casino, is that I don't want to service you if I know that I'm always just giving you money.
Yeah, right. That's a one-way road.
So that your $1,000 in coin in or $10,000 in coin in that I would get a theoretical win from, if that goes away, I as an owner have to be okay with that.
Sure.
And so we've had a client that actually went from X% to 0.
Okay.
And they couldn't be happier.
And I mean, obviously they had you kind of walking them through the pros and cons of this, it sounds like, but how far, I mean, let's just pretend for the sake of example, they took a 10% floor share to 0% floor share because it's round numbers. How much of the dollars walked out?
So they didn't lose a nickel in profit.
So that's good. Oh, in profit. Yeah. So you're saying, look,
You got to look at profit, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what you
for
put
sure.
in the bank, right?
Coin in change. Yeah, that makes sense. So your coin in went down, but because you weren't losing exclusively, you actually profited either the same or more.
Correct.
I think that's helpful. I mean,
And it was like,
frameworks.
one, they believed in it. Two, the results spoke for themselves. And three is, selfishly for a slot operator, it was like, I don't got to deal with the phone calls of this person tried to kick me off of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And it happens, right? I mean, there are some games that are at a state that you're guaranteed. Like, think about the old Ainsworth must-hit buys, which were like our true persistence. But again, back in the day, it wasn't a problem because those were the only things you could really take advantage of. Now, advantage players will take advantage of those because it's just another ATM.
Yep.
So, dollar denom, Ainsworth must hit buy, must hit at 10K. When it gets to like I think the number is like $9,902, it becomes positive EV. Starts at 9, hits at 10. I don't know if that's the right number.
Yeah, but there's a line.
There's a number, right? So when it gets to a certain number, I would pay you if you were sitting there to get away.
Yeah, right.
Here's $500, dude. Like you're playing $2 a spin. You don't know what's going on.
Pretend you won. Let me.
I'm like, dude, here's $500. See you later, and I cash out $10,000.
Yeah, right.
So, do you want that?
No,
I mean, I don't want that.
No, it doesn't seem like you do. I just think what I'm trying to get to now is you say, look, let's say people listen to this, go, I get it, I'm convinced. Unless it's the CFO sitting on the pod going, well, I still don't want my coin in going down. Right? Like they all answer to somebody, and there's going to be a metric there. That's not the right way to do it, but the reality is there's a metric they're managing to. So to your point, profitability, that should be the idea. But
so you nailed it, right? So I think in our industry, and I'm new to slots 5 years, floor average is the KPI.
Yeah.
Right? It's how you guys sell slots.
For sure.
Is it the right KPI? And if I asked them, they were like, well, I don't know. That's what we've always used.
Yeah.
And I would challenge every operator, is that the right KPI?
Yeah. I mean, I think, we had Kevin on Sweet back when Cosmo was still independent. And he talked about it. He goes, look, I really try to look at, to your point about profitability, because he goes, look, you can give me a rev share game or a sold game and your bar goes up higher, but it's really about, I'd rather lease it if it's still going to make me more than my own game, right? So there are people out there doing that. I pick on him because he's a friend of the show, but there are also probably some that are going, I just need my coin in to be what it is, and that's all we're driving here, because they probably don't take as much time to go into it. They got other things they're focused on, right? So and
for me, as these games continue to grow, and as they are, because it's kind of just
it's working.
It's in a vicious cycle where top of the report, let's create more. Top of the report, let's create more. I'm not an economist, but there will be a point where how come Mike doesn't come anymore?
Yeah.
How come Ari doesn't come anymore?
For sure.
And now marketing has to work 10 times harder.
Yeah.
Because you think about reactivation
yeah,
campaigns, acquisition campaigns, and all this to get more players. Are like, why are we losing players faster? And I believe if that 10% of the floor goes to 20%, we're in a heap of trouble.
Yeah, makes sense.
We're in a heap of trouble.
So just to kind of summarize, this is a real issue. Your recommendation is get the long-term games off the floor. There's a world where some persistence is fine, but longer term, less good. But I'm hearing at a minimum, just know what you're doing. Right?
I think is that, for me, the goal, and I appreciate you having me, is
for sure.
Having the slot operators that are having these conversations with vendors is just have an informed conversation.
What's it? That's
Instead of being like, oh, it's top of the, report, I'll take a bank of 6. Just ask a question. Hey, what are my risks? Because the vendor owes that to the person that they're selling to. They owe it, right? It's a relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And so what I've learned is that some of people selling it don't truly understand the problem, right? They're like, oh, yeah, true persistence, but it's really not a big deal and all that, but it can be a really big deal.
Well, somebody understands it, just as it's hard to get out. Plus, I mean, again, from somebody who's been on the vendor side, sometimes you go in and you go, I got 6 new games, and I'm not going to know the 91st day of math on all of these, right? So, not to say I should get a pass, but I just think that's what, to your point about the conversation, you go, well, wait a minute. Now people maybe get in their head about a long-term persistence. There could be a cliff here. Let's walk through that, understand it more. And again, it's up to you to make the choice. You own the casino. Are you okay with this ride that you're offering or not? Right? And
yeah, I mean, and the thing is, there's a game that's coming out real soon that is one of the more popular games that ever been created that has a true persistence feature to it. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
That's it. Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and that's all we could do, right? So for me, the 4 or 5 years of studying this was just a way of me giving back to slot operators and kind of understanding what game designers and slot manufacturers are doing. And maybe it's not a problem in the long run. I believe it is. And I know that if I ran a casino again, I would just want to really have that conversation and understand, where am I vulnerable and where am I not?
Yeah, makes sense. I think Yeah, that's incredible. You now make me want to do a series on this to get more of like the operator viewpoint. The
Yeah, we got to do. I'll
manufacturer
come back.
viewpoint.
Like, let's get a
We can do
manufacturer.
debate
Like,
if they want to do a
great.
debate. No, I just think this is such an interesting topic, and there are very few things that are black and white, and I don't think this is one of those. But I think it's like it's enough nuance where you can go, well, everybody has an interest here, and yet not, right? So
if you really want to like laugh and follow a social influencer that is a slot advantage player, I don't know him, but go to YouTube, go to J Fructose.
Okay.
Fructose, like
yep,
sugar,
like
whatever.
the corn chip.
Yep. He is as funny as they come. He's a slot advantage player that lives locally in Las Vegas.
Oh, cool.
He exposes all the plays for free.
Yeah.
It is extremely comical. Like, go in and watch that, and you'll get a chance to kind of see
What they're doing.
the world and what it looks like. And then, as a slot operator, go back and be like, do I really want that in my casino?
Yeah, fair enough. You got to learn. So
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to educate myself and obviously everyone listening here and jumping on the call out so quickly. So appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
Legend and a scholar, my friend. Till next time, we'll do it again.
All right,
Appreciate
brother.
you, man. Cheers.
Thanks.